This is a Step Beyond the Fire podcast. My name is Cully. I'm a land manager and a wildlife biologist here in my home state of Florida. I invite you to join me on a journey as I seek to document the little-known stories told by those who use fire for the benefit of the land, also known as prescribed fire. So come on, let's head into the field and meet the people where the flame ends and new life begins. Welcome, listeners, to A Step Beyond the Fire. This is your host, Cully here with another episode. We are at the world headquarters today of the Florida Trail Association, and I'm here with my good friend, Jeff Glenn, who I've spoken on the phone a few times and got to know each other a little bit here. I'm glad we're sitting here today having a beer, just hanging out Friday afternoon here, sunny Gainesville. And I wanted to talk about Jeff a little bit and get into some of the specifics of what the trail has done in this area and moreover throughout the state of Florida. But Jeff manages 400 miles of the Florida Trail, which stretches from Ocala centrally all the way west to the Swanee River down to the Green Swamp in Central Florida, which is a big area. It's a lot of territory to cover. So he works with volunteers and partners to coordinate trail construction, maintenance, and outreach efforts. Thanks for having us. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. Sharing a beer. End
Yes,
of the
sir.
week. Feels good.
It's been a week, man. I wanted to get into a little bit of, before we talk about the Florida Trail, let's talk about you a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you became a trail manager.
So my now wife, when I met her in 2005, going way back, we went to school together in Massachusetts. And she knew that I was studying outdoor, environmental studies, just generic college, title,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
that I was studying outdoor. I was studying outdoor leadership, and I was studying to be a guide. And I had thought about leading professionally as a guide, doing wilderness work, backpacking, climbing, and whatnot. But I was really turned off by the elitism of it.
And we got some things to talk about. I see where you're going with that.
And so she had a background in service work, doing work with the Student Conservation Association. She had taken some time off in between school, in between, she took a year off in college to go do a program and lead trail crews. So she talked it up, and I actually just changed paths just like that. And I really steered myself towards the service world of conservation instead of just the privileged access, which is kind of how I saw, guiding really. And so I was more interested in, stewarding the environment through trails, which is a facet of recreation and conservation work. It's one side of conservation work.
It's the gateway.
It's a gateway, but it's also, the way that I got into it was all access. It was free to participate for young people. And I saw that as a way for me to still get the same outdoor experiences, backcountry type travel, and actually more primitive backcountry travel, and not even travel stationary. A lot of my background, my start was, month-long wilderness hitches, remote locations. And so I did that for a while as a seasonal, and kind of like it goes for this kind of work. People that get into conservation work, you start as a seasonal and you basically wait for a permanent position to open up. And so I did that eventually. And after leading seasonal crews, after I graduated from college, I started to piece together the seasonal stuff where I was doing it full time.
So these crews that you're talking about are folks that in the national parks and in big wilderness areas during the right seasons, they have to go into the wilderness and maintain the trails, right? When the snowfall's not there and when the weather allows, right?
Right. So I found myself in the desert in the wintertime.
Ooh.
And so there's only a few places, there's only a couple places in the country where you can do that. And so I probably did 3 trail crews in Saguaro National Park and 2 outside Tucson. And I've done another one actually in Arizona, BLM land and some wilderness outside of Gila Bend, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. But, I got older and responsibilities started to creep up. And so I found my way to full-time work, and I was managing a trail program in the Allegheny National Forest on the North Country National Scenic Trail. And that was my introduction to trail management and administration. And that was 14 years ago.
So it takes a special person to be able to be in the trail hiking world, which I don't know a lot about. I've done a little bit of trail hiking myself, but what kind of skill sets do you need to be a good trail hiker in your world?
I think you need to start as a hiker, one, and I did. So before I did trail work, I went to school late. I traveled for 4 years after high school. I didn't go to school right away, or I tried and then it didn't last. So I left and I became a backpacker, and I was kind of chronic wanderer. And that gave me an appreciation. I feel like anytime you do any job, you need to be able to see it from multiple angles. So for me, I have this background of seeing it as a user. I saw it as a user first, and then I saw it as a maintainer, and now I see it as a manager. And so I can see all these different perspectives of how it's done, how it needs to be done from a management point of view, what it should look like from a public point of view, from the user standpoint.
Yeah.
And also what's the most efficient way to do it as being the labor on the ground.
Yeah. So you really kind of got a little bit of everything. You got hands-on, on the ground experience, which you told me a little while ago. You've done some 1,000 miles on, what was it, the AT Appalachian Trail. You got some miles under your belt. So when you go out there in the field and you're working with folks, you know how to coordinate the trail activities. You know how to coordinate those things. And then going into the administrative world, which, as you and I both know, that's not as much fun, but it has better equipped you to do your job today.
I spend a lot of time out in the field now, so it's not like I'm desk bound. I'm desk bound when I want to be.
That's really good.
And I'm in the field when I need to be, which, given the autonomy that I have with my job here at Florida Trail, I can be in the woods as much as I feel like I need to get my job done, to achieve the mission, which is basically to protect, promote, and build the Florida Trail. So, I've been here long enough where, there's a lot of trust in our organization with our main partners, the U.S. Forest Service. My job as a regional trail manager, they trust me to get the job done, to be a good partner with all the land management agencies that I work with, which is federal, state, county, city, military, and a lot of private. They trust me just to know what needs to be done. I hit my deliverables that we kind of mutually agree upon. And so I'm in the field as much as I want to. I was in the woods this morning out at Camp La Noche, which is the big Boy Scout camp in Paisley, just south of the Ocala National Forest.
Paisley, yeah, that's a small dot on the map, but
yeah, but that's the beginning. It's kind of close to the beginning of my region.
There's a wildfire over there today, somewhere in that area. Did you see any smoke when you were over there?
No.
I got an alert today that there's somewhere. Well, it's kind of near the south end of the forest somewhere. I have to look it back up. No smoke today.
No smoke. No trucks running down the road. Nothing.
Well, one of the episodes that we did in the past was Ocala National Forest, and we went to Salt Springs and had a great time with the wildlife biologist on that forest. And her name is Liz Ramirez. So she walked us through some recently burned areas, and I consider that place the land of fire because they put 30,000 acres of fire on the ground every year out there, or at least their goal is to do that. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of that in your time traversing the trails in there, huh?
Yeah, so I know Liz. I'm glad that she was on the show. Most of the staff on the Ocala that has anything to do with, even if they don't have anything to do with recreation, the wildlife folks, the botany folks, we communicate quite a bit.
There's a lot of common ground there too, I'd say.
Well, there is, and given that the trail crosses through 92 miles of that particular forest. And so
92, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 72 miles of the eastern quarter of the Florida Trail, and then we've got 20 miles on the western side, which comes up from the Cross Florida Greenway. And they meet near Salt Springs at the 88 store, world famous 88 store.
The 88 store. I've done that little section myself. Yeah, look it up on a map, listeners. The 88 store. That's the place to hang out there. Place to get water and get a drink. If you're putting some miles out in that forest there, it's on the map. I remember that's kind of like a little place that you can stop in and
showers, laundry.
Yeah,
you can get hot food. Mm-hmm. You might have to put it in the microwave, but you can get hot food and you can get cold beer cheap. And it's hikers, bikers, hippies, rednecks, and everything in between. It's a good place, and they do a good job, and they're pretty welcoming to our hikers. When the thru hikers come through, it's a must see for people that are doing long distance sections.
That section of the trail there has so many unique ecosystem types there. You go that slight elevation change through the forest there. You come up on the sand hills and you get into the scrub. Pretty unique place. But so your trajectory in life led you into administration, working with the Florida Trail now. Going back to what you said about the mission, I think the Florida Trail has a beautiful mission that needs to be talked about a little bit today, because if you could maybe share a little bit more about that and how your life has kind of moved in that same direction with the Florida Trail Association.
It probably starts with just National Scenic Trails. You mentioned the AT, and I'd done a long stretch on the AT, and hopefully I have plans to go finish it when my children get a little bit older.
The AT. Woo! How many miles is the whole?
It's 2,200.
2,200.
Approximately, rounding a little bit. But I've spent time and I've done maintenance actually on. Gosh, I've probably hiked on 8 of the 11 National Scenic Trails.
Wow.
And so I've probably hiked on 8 of them, and I've done maintenance on maybe 4 or 5 of them. And, most people don't realize that, everybody knows the AT, everybody's heard of the Pacific Crest Trail, but most people don't realize that there's a national trail system, which includes 11 National Scenic Trails and 19 National Historic Trails. So those trails are all managed under the same umbrella from the National Trails Office, which is up in D.C. with the Park Service. So there's 11 of these trails, National Scenic Trails. I'm not going to talk about the historic trails, but that's not a lot. I mean, that's not a lot. If you consider all of the tens of thousands of miles of trails in this country, there's only 11 that have the same designation, and those are congressionally designated. So it kind of elevates the status, both in terms of national significance, but also in terms of the funding available, but in terms of just global recognition for what they are and kind of the quality of the management that we have. And so our mission, being one of 11 kind of elevates us to just a high status where we hold ourselves to a high standard, right? We're not a state park trail, and we're on the national stage here. So we need to make ourselves kind of fit that mold of national status. So there's only 3 National Scenic Trails that are within a single state. There's the Arizona Trail, the Ice Age Trail, which is Wisconsin, and then the Florida Trail. So 1,500 miles of trail that needs to be maintained every single year. And I'll just say to everyone listening, I've done trails maintenance in many, many states all over the country, from Alaska to the Caribbean to the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Northwest, New England, desert. Yeah. And I will say that there is not a single place, and I challenge anyone to find a place that's harder to do trail work than Florida. The work itself is not hard. If you can do land maintenance, if you can do landscaping, you can do trail work in Florida. The challenge, and this is my challenge, is come October 1st, when people feel like they are ready to go outside and you're still sweating like crazy. Come October 1st, it's like a gun goes off and you have 5 months of decent weather to go maintain 1,500 miles of trail. There's no place else in the country that has that kind of race to get the job done. So there's months where we're out every weekend because we work with volunteers. It's our mission to protect, promote, and build and maintain the Florida Trail. I mean, that's a 12-month thing, but I'll say from October to March, it's a real thing. I mean, we don't stop. It's a real hustle.
And then the volunteers, that is the involvement of, the next generation, but many generations of different generations of folks have been involved in this over the years. Some a lot more than others, but that really is sort of keeps the bus moving in the right direction, right, so to speak. The volunteers you leverage resources through them, and they work through that, right?
There would be no Florida Trail without our dedicated network of volunteers.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say it a different way. So the Florida Trail started in 1966, and it didn't become a national scenic trail until 83. So we're about to celebrate 40 years coming up.
That's going to be a big
celebration. As a national scenic trail. Yeah, we have a lot of events.
Where is the celebration this year? Is there one planned, or?
There's going to be several. And actually, in November, there's going to be the Partnership for the National Trail System. So all those 30 different scenic and historic trails we're getting together in Orlando.
They're all going to get together. So do you know any details that we can give folks about that right now? Or
I don't.
I'll post a little link.
Stay tuned for more info.
Great.
Yeah, and so our volunteers are extremely dedicated. I will say that. So the Ocala National Forest was, we say it was the Golden Blaze. That's where the Florida Trail started. Actually, there were blazes put in Fakahatchee Strand, which is nowhere near the Florida Trail at this point. But so other than like some exploratory trail work done in Fakahatchee, in the mid 60s, in 1966 at Clearwater Lake, which is where I was today, and on the south end of the Ocala, that's where the Florida Trail really started.
Can you find the tree that the blaze was put on, the original Golden Blaze you're talking about?
We painted a Golden Blaze. So we put up there's a historical marker down at that trailhead. And when we dedicated the marker, it's just, one of the state historic signs. When we dedicated that, a Golden Blaze was painted on a tree, but you know how pine bark comes off. So the blazes don't last more than 3 years anyway.
Yeah. True.
So
but there's a designated marker there. So if anybody wants to go find that, it's near Clear Lake.
Yeah, Clearwater Lake Trailhead, south end of the Ocala National Forest, and that's a major trailhead.
Really where the first real, where it really began, was there.
Yeah,
cool, very cool.
And from there, starting in the '60s, they really just connected green dot, the green spaces on the map, which back in the '60s there was a lot of that. I mean, up until recently, Florida, led the way in terms of statewide, land protection. Obviously, one of our biggest challenges is fragmentation, but there was a lot of low-hanging fruit back in the 60s between large open spaces, whether it's public or private. Now, obviously, that's much harder. I'm sure we'll kind of transition into challenges here in a minute, but that's pretty much how the Florida Trail started, was just connecting all of those kind of green conservation swaths.
And it allows people, what I found most interesting about it is you actually can hike across private land. And in certain sections of the trail it's all connected. It's not just public land. There's partnerships. There's people who are joined in this vision that you guys have of connecting this whole entire trail. So I know in certain areas there's, when you go on the website and you're planning out a hike, you're like, okay, hey, there's a little section of this trail that you need to stay on the trail because this is somebody's property. So that's really interesting how it's all connected through those partnerships, through the people, through the efforts of so many, to make that such an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, so today I was at Camp La Noche, which is a Boy Scout camp. So it's owned by the Northeast or North Central Council.
Is that in Ocala?
It's in Paisley. So just across the road from.
I have a story about that, but go ahead.
So that's private property, right? I mean, Boy Scouts of America or Scouts BSA, whatever their name is this year, but that's a 2,000 acre private parcel. But it's for an owner like that, they have 1,700 scouts coming to camp this weekend, and all summer long, that's when they get most of the majority of their campers. Those kids and their kids and the adults that accompany them are using the Florida Trail. 2.5 miles of trail on camp property. So there's a private landowner that they are an amazing partner. They will do whatever it takes to keep the Florida Trail there. We have unfettered access for maintenance, and they're an easy partner to work with. Because and the nice thing about that camp is that one of their boundaries is Seminole State Forest, and the other one's the Ocala National Forest. So for being such a large landowner that is more or less protected from development, and surrounded by, public land, I think they look forward to kind of the long vision of recreation and as it comes and leaves their property where it goes, which would be more, more protected corridor. But that'd be an example of a large landowner.
Yeah. And my quick story about that, I'm pretty sure it was that camp because I worked for FWC in the past, and I was a biologist on the bear management team in Ocala, and we get a phone call. The bear had gotten into somebody's freezer or like an outdoor refrigerator deal. So we go down there, and a bear had gone into, and they may hear this, and it may be somewhere right near this area, but the bear ripped this giant steel door off the hinges of this outdoor refrigerator at this camp and got in and ate a whole bunch of ice cream that was inside that freezer. And I remember going up to the side of this whole freezer and I'm like, holy cow, how'd that bear do that? Because it ripped the whole thing was stainless steel and just ripped it apart and threw it through the door side, got in there and got all that ice cream. Yeah.
On a hot day, I might do the same thing. Yeah, I don't blame the bear one bit.
I didn't either. Yep. So these partnerships, these great ways of inspiring the next generation of people and connecting with so many different groups, as I'm sure you've done over the years, of all ages. Yeah, there's a lot of joy there.
Yeah. So like I was saying before, my background in this was coming from a place of leadership and as a mentor to young people. I mean, I was a young person when I started doing this, but now I look back at someone who's 15 and that's just like a complete different, that's young now, really, really young. But that's where I started, was teaching, people of that age. And that is something that I look forward to, but I rarely have the opportunity to do, is work with people of that age group. Most of our volunteers, and it's a pattern, it's a nationwide, it's not a phenomenon, it's just the way it is. But most, people that do volunteer in conservation work tend to be older and white. And, FTA has a huge mission to build up a next generation, a more diverse, inclusive,
true, yeah,
community of volunteers, but also users. We're not just, mainly what I do is the trail itself, but FTA, we do outreach for inclusion and activity. It's, the users of the trail. A lot of my concern is making sure that those users have a trail to use.
Sure, yeah.
But as far as even just bringing in new volunteers, bringing in the next generation is super important. Most of the volunteers that I have that are really dedicated have been around for many years. And I'm talking, I have some volunteers on the Ocala National Forest that were there in the early 70s. In the very,
oh, really?
Yeah, at the beginning, and they're still pushing mowers, and they're still getting their chainsaw certification refreshed every 3 years.
Wow! So I think this is a good opportunity. If any of our listeners have, the desire to reach out to, whether it's you or somebody who's in their geographical area, how do they do that? How can they get involved?
We advertise a few ways. The easiest way is just through our website or sign up for our newsletter, which you can do on our website. Every Friday we have called the Friday Waypoint, and we send out a newsletter that has the goings on in the Trail Association. And in the fall, probably August, September, we send out all of our fall maintenance events. So that's one way. We're a membership-based organization, and, you join our organization and you get, one of the perks is you get the quarterly magazine called The Footprint. And that has a calendar of events. We print them on actually really beautiful kind of cardstock, and they're kind of like collector's items. And every year
is that what that is on the wall there?
It is.
Such a beautiful. I've been looking over your shoulder at this beautiful mosaic. Let's see if I can describe this. There's like 6 or 7 ecosystem types, and there are all these beautiful mosaics with a lot of colors, a lot of wildlife, a lot of plants. It's just wonderful. It's just such a neat piece of artwork. I love that.
And so we actually have, and you'll leave with some, because every year we basically contract with a different artist to do a whole series.
Oh, really? Wow.
The info is the same, but the artwork, we'll do like 5 or 6 different prints.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hand those out at our outreach events. We definitely do a lot of community outreach, public events.
And then there's the designation of the gateway communities, which I was at that event a few weeks ago. Well, I'll let you talk about that since you're involved with that, but that was a really special event too.
Yeah, so we have a Gateway Communities program, and we have a full-time staff member who is responsible for building those relationships with other trails, call them trail towns. The state of Florida has a trail town program through the Office of Greenways and Trails. FTA has our own, we call it the Gateway Community Program. And so those are communities that are more or less on the route of the Florida Trail, somewhere along the 1,500 miles. And through relationships with those communities, we're able to offer resources to our hikers, whether they're section hikers, day hikers, long distance hikers, through hikers, et cetera. Those folks have, one, the information they need about where to resupply, where to take a shower, where are the local businesses to support, whether it's a place to eat, a place to sleep. Where's the post office? Where's the best place to get an ice cream?
That's critical, man. If you're doing a big trip, you got to have those things. You got to have those logistics. It makes all the difference.
We have some really good communities along the route of the trail that some are new. Us having a full-time, basically, manager for the Gateway Community Program is relatively new in the past year or so. But some of these Gateway community towns have been partners with us for a long time. We're like deeply rooted in those communities. And hikers through our Gateway Community Program have come to know those places, and word travels up and down the trail that this is a place you need to stop in. This is a place to take a 0 day, meaning a place to take your shoes off and just take a day off.
Chill.
Yeah, just chill for a day.
Yeah.
Some of the communities along the trail open their doors literally. Lake Butler, Florida, here in north central Florida.
Sure. Yeah.
They used to let hikers sleep in their old renovated train depot. But now really? the building is no longer accessible just because it's leased out to an office. But hikers are allowed to camp out front of City Hall, and they have restroom access, water.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it's a block away from a huge supermarket, actually. So there are certainly gateway communities along the trail that people look forward to. And yeah, so our relationships, it's not just landowners, it's, the communities along the trail. There's a stigma against, people walking down the side of the road with a pack. There's not, the difference between a through hiker and a homeless person.
What's that?
Gore-Tex.
Gore-Tex.
So, there's definitely areas where, people get the hairy eyeball because they're just, they look like they're just homeless walking down the road.
Covered in mud and just
dirty, smelly, with a pack. Right. So getting the word out to these communities that know, this cluster of people sitting on the sidewalk, they're not homeless. They actually have money and they're there to support
just
your
having
community.
a good time. Yeah.
Have a good time, but hopefully, support the towns along the way.
That's true. There's revenue dollars. There's ecotourism.
Yeah.
I guess you can call that ecotourism dollars that are coming through there too. So there's an economic advantage to all of this too. I think that's why it's such a great sell. For these communities like Palatka, which just gained that designation as well. So it's really, that's incredible that there's such a good connection there and people are able to come through and enjoy and have a place to rest along the way. I'm inspired now. I'm gonna do another section here one of these days. I've been looking at you guys have this great map on your website. Remind me for listeners, the website.
Sure, you can find us at floridatrail.org.
Floridatrail.org.
And we have an interactive web map. It's
the map, man. The map is critical. You got your mileage. You got you can plan it out to very, within the foot if you really wanted to, but it gives a very clear picture of the distances, the places you can stop, the camps, all of the things along the way. That's a great one.
Yeah, and not only that, but you can actually navigate our official partner in the management of the trails is the U.S. Forest Service, and you can navigate to their website. You can just do a web search for U.S. Forest Service Florida Trail, and you can actually download the KMZ file, so a Google Earth file.
Even better. Yeah.
Land managers, we use, Esri software, and, we're using GIS, but for the homeowner, just, who gets a free version of Google Earth, you can download the Florida Trail layer. So you can build your own maps at home, and you can plan, you can
do
customize it. You can do whatever you want.
Get in the weeds as much as you want.
As much as you feel like you want to, but all of that information is publicly available.
Yeah, that's good.
FTA, we produce our own maps in-house, and it's the information is collected by our volunteers, vetted by our staff, and we publish maps in-house. We print them here at our office in Gainesville, and they're printed on waterproof paper, and we sell a lot of those. People still buy print maps.
Yeah, I bought one 10 years ago when I did a big section. So that was a great map. It's one of the best maps. I've still got it.
The topography of Florida, is such that, we don't have topo maps. There's no need, Florida Trail's not flat, but
exactly.
So the scale of our map is such that it's a 10,000 foot view, more or less. We're putting, 50 miles, 60 miles on a sheet. So they're great for at-home planning. Yeah, they're great for at-home planning. And there's some other really amazing tools out there as well that people are using right now.
Great. Well, that's all good stuff. Well, our listeners can go check that website out. One last question I'm going to ask you here. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a memorable experience that stands out in your mind as a good lesson that maybe you learned in all of this?
I don't know. What's the age group of this? What age are your listeners here? I don't know.
All listeners of all ages.
Okay, so that's good information for me to know before I share any stories with you. Nothing too crazy has happened on the Florida Trail, I will say.
Any wildlife encounters or fire encounters maybe along the way?
Yeah, you and I were talking about fire before, and no, I appreciate how good our land management partners are when they burn. They generally give me a heads up, but not always, right? Okay, so maybe there's the story there is that, you know what it's like to be on a burn crew. Burn boss wakes up and it's the beginning of March and conditions are just right.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're going to burn today. You didn't know it the day before, but today's the day. I'm like, do they think to call me? No. Sometimes
need to call you. That's a good.
Well, sometimes, we post if we know that there's a burn coming up, or if we know that there's any kind of closure, we post it on our website. And so hikers, especially during through hiking season, right? We know there's people on the trail.
Sure.
If it's a weekend in the busy time of year, that's critical information. But during burn season, when decisions are made, when the weather is appropriate, when the window is right, you mobilize and you just get it done. And so it doesn't always happen. I'm not always contacted.
Kind of lower on the totem pole of contacts, huh?
Yeah, and even if the fire crew talks to if an agency has a recreation staff, which not all of them do, like not all the water management districts have recreation staff.
This is true. Yeah.
And so even if those folks do, they forget. They don't always contact me. So, we've lost some bridges, you could say, due to fire.
Oh yeah, the bridges. That's a key component, I guess. They tend to forget about those back in the woods, huh?
Yeah, that's not even it's not even an issue of like miscommunication. When a structure gets burned, honestly, I'd probably say because of changing staff.
Yeah.
All the time, people are in and out of those kinds of jobs, and the new person isn't familiar with recreation. They don't know where the bridges are that the crew needs to go protect.
I see. Yeah.
So, last year we lost 2 good-sized structures on a national forest. I won't say which one. And
Mum is the word.
Just in case anyone's listening. Well, there's only 3, so you've got a 33% chance of getting it right. So we lost 2 structures last year.
Oh yeah, bummer.
But
so then they call you and say, Jeff, we need you down here, man. This thing, we need some help.
Yeah, that's one way it can get done. That's one way it can get done. But it can be problematic. There's a bridge, there's 2 bridges, they're still out. and this was last March, that they were burned up.
Oh yeah,
and they're still out for various reasons. Yeah, obviously safety is priority number one, and if there's a high bridge, if there's a bridge over a swift moving creek during rainy season, those are big concerns. And we've closed trail before because of unsafe structures due to fire. We've had other structures burned before in the past on a different national forest. So I oversee trail in 2 national forests, Ocala and Osceola. I'm going to name them, but they're both guilty. But
right.
But it happens. I don't
Sure.
There's no hard feelings. No one's getting blamed.
Yeah,
it is definitely what it is. And we share recreation and fire and wildlife and just general biology. We share these wild spaces and we manage them, as a community, and we do the best we can. And no one's trying to step on anybody's toes or do anything else. I'm grateful for fire because it makes my job as a manager, as a trail maintainer, generally it makes it a lot easier. We were talking before, I was hiking in Sandhill today on the Ocala down by Clearwater, and it's ready for a burn. So it's Sandhill, but there's a lot of oak scrub coming in, and generally, in a really healthy sandhill that has burned, in its regular cycle, it's just mowing. It's wiregrass, and occasionally you get some turkey oaks in there, and some other flowering plants. But if it goes too long, you get a lot of oak, and it's a lot harder to maintain. So we rely on fire to help us keep the trail open.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Jeff, it has been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting us here and talking with us a little bit today. It's very much appreciated. Hope we have you on the show again one of these days.
That was my pleasure. I'm grateful for the opportunity, promote the Florida Trail and just the work that we're doing, but also, respect to you for talking to all these other great folks. You were giving me a list of all the people you've talked to, Liz and Tracy and, Barry and Ben and all these people that I work with.
Episodes soon to be released. Yes, sir. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. It's also been real fun as you have led us today on another step beyond the fire.